Another attribute of HTTP is it is connectionless. Actually, this video focuses on how HTTP connectivity works. Alright, so it is a connectionless protocol. And when I say connectionless protocol, or at least it behaves as connectionless application, we're not specific to the transport layer because connectionless transport layer is a UDP. We all know HTTP is using TCP. So actually this course has nothing to do with UDP. We are focusing on TCP because web-based applications are TCP based. Anyway, so it is connectionless. Okay, again, connectionless application. And this is how it works. So I am going to add our client here, and I will also add our server. Okay, so our web server. So here's how a connectionless application works. And I will also add the connection in between. There you go. Now we already know that we have TCP three-way handshake, and this happens during the lower layers, okay, up to the transport level. So we have TCP three-way handshake. So these are the SYN, SYNAC, and ACK. Now, assuming that TCP three-way handshake is complete, it will now form a session and is now ready to send HTTP requests. So this is the tricky part of the HTTP connection. So as it sends HTTP request, okay, HTTP, excuse me, let's redo this. HTTP request. So as it sends HTTP request, which is the first process, what will happen is on the server side, this side, okay, it will process the request as assuming that the web server received the request, it will process it and it will be disconnected. The client will disconnect to the web browser, or excuse me, to the web server. So you will see a disconnection here. Let me redo this. Let me redo this line. There you go. One more. All right. So there is a connection. This is the first part of the process, or the first half. There will be a disconnection, okay, because the client will disconnect itself to the web server, okay, as the web server processes the request, and it will only respond if the web server is ready. Okay, so it will respond, okay, meaning it will send HTTP respond if it's ready, or when ready. There you go. Now, before it sends the HTTP response from the web server back to the client, it will do another process, another step, which is it will re-establish the connection of the client and the web server. So this is C, the third process. Okay, and once it's re-established, it will now ready to send the HTTP respond. Okay, HTTP response, again from the web server back to the client. So this is the fourth process. Now this HTTP response, this is actually the contents that we talk about on the first part of the discussion from the previous video. So this context, this contents, it can be images, it can be text, many different types of graphics. It can be also documents such as PDF and many more. Okay. Now, the third attribute is something that we can compare HTTP from other applications. And this is stateless. Yes, HTTP is a stateless application. And what do you mean stateless? All right, so here's how it works. So you know the client server relationship, okay? The client and the web server relationship, they only know each other during the transaction process, which is the HTTP request and response. So this is the initial, this is the final process, okay? Many people just know the HTTP request and response. They don't know what's happening in between. But anyway, so stateless means, let me repeat this. They only know, they client and server know, they only know each other during the transaction process. Again, this is the HTTP request and response. Now, once the HTTP request and response is completed, it already ended, meaning session is ended. Okay, session is complete. That's it. And if the same client and the same web server wants to send HTTP or wants to establish a new session, they want to communicate to each other again, they need to redo the entire process. Okay, so they need to redo the entire process, which is again the HTTP request and response. All right. In short, HTTP or HTTP-based applications or web-based application is not a long-lived applications. It's not a long-lived applications. And maybe you're thinking, what is an example of a long-lived application? Well, there are a few. Okay, long-lived applications such as Telnet, SSH, FTP, and many others.